Hey, welcome back everybody. Hope we're having a wonderful Friday and hopefully a wonderful start to March, and thus meteorological spring has finally arrived here. It feels like we've been in winter for honestly a couple of years, but we finally made it now to March. So definitely some exciting times ahead, and also hopefully a change to the warmer side of things. But a little bit of a spoiler alert for today's video. Most of what we're talking about is not necessarily going to indicate that spring-like weather, as we've got big time blizzard conditions out west. We've got some very cold, rainy, and even icy conditions into portions of the southeast today, and also our eyes are on kind of a storm system or two even within the next 7 to 14 days or so that could bring some trouble on down the road, including potentially a wintry, icy kind of threat for somebody. And we'll talk about all of that in today's video. Now, if you haven't already subscribed, definitely consider doing so. Like the video if you like it, and of course comment, let me know where you're watching from. And if you're new to the channel, thank you so much for joining us, and if you're a regular, I appreciate you coming back to watch once again. With all that said though, let's go ahead and jump on into that forecast. Now, taking a look at our satellite imagery and our long-wave infrared, if you want to get super technical with it today, we definitely have some active areas out there. And we'll start in the southeast. You'll notice we have a little bit of a spin here kind of over Missouri right now. That has helped to pull enough kind of moisture out of the Gulf of Mexico here that we have a lot of just kind of rainy conditions working on through it. And remember, we just had that potent cold front just a couple days ago, so that cold air is still left over, and we're having a very, honestly, winter-like day kind of to start meteorological spring here. So maybe not quite what you were hoping for if you're a fan of kind of warmer, nicer weather. But again, this is just one day, and I do think the pattern ahead could, change to once again more of a springtime feel for some folks in the southeast. But again, not everyone up and down the eastern seaboard will see that kind of prolonged period of nicer spring-like weather here in the future. Now, the other area, obviously, on your map, and I know a lot of you are probably have heard about in the news, or maybe you have friends out west, we've got a big-time blizzard out here, and I've been talking about this for a couple days now, but again, we're just getting a lot of precipitation and moisture to kind of smack up into the west coast and kind of hit these higher terrains from the Sierra Nevadas all the way up through the Cascades, and we're getting a lot of wind energy and plenty, again, of moisture at the same time here, and thus we're getting big-time snowfall totals. In fact, some folks could get more than 6 foot of snow, or 6 feet of snow, I guess. So, I mean, that's getting about into pretty tall human heights worth of snow. And all of that, again, just from one storm system. Some parts of the country, that would be a decade of winters, but for parts of the west here, we're going to get all of that just within a week or so. So, again, very impressive stuff happening out that way. Now, taking a look at our watches, warnings, advisories, and radar imagery, we'll go ahead and start in the east and the southeast here, just kind of get this out of the way. Again, as I mentioned, just some widespread rain falling. In fact, we even had some sleet this morning into portions of the southeast. I know upstate South Carolina, kind of from the Pickens area over towards Greenville, Spartanburg, saw a little bit of sleet mixing in with that rain this morning. Same story for kind of the foothills of North Carolina. But all that, if you did see some sleet, is likely quickly changing over to just some good old-fashioned cold rain here in Charlotte where I live. I think we're sitting at about 43 degrees in rain. So again, kind of a very wintry day and something we're probably more used to in January or February. But again, it is only the 1st of March, so not too out of the normal to see this kind of stuff this time of year. Now, I will also mention we do have a couple winter weather advisories up into the higher terrains of West Virginia and even here into the northern mountains of North Carolina. Some of this rain is starting as some sleet and freezing rain, maybe even a little bit of snow into these higher elevations. But again, I think it likely changes over to rain at some point during this event. But either way, if you are in some of those higher elevations, definitely be careful if you have to go anywhere today. And I would recommend just waiting at least until temperatures can get back above freezing and those roads kind of thaw out a little bit. Now, taking a look back out west, again, this is where kind of the big time, I don't want to say record-breaking weather, but it might be record-breaking for some areas. But either way, just very active weather is ongoing. And you'll notice all this kind of blue on your map showing up. This is rain and snow, again, coming out of the Pacific Ocean into the west coast. And where we have these kind of red boxes on your map here into the Sierra Nevadas, into the mountains of Nevada proper, we could definitely be seeing some blizzard conditions. And those are indicated, again, by those colors, those blizzard warnings issued by local National Weather Service offices. And then in those pink colors on your map, we have winter storm warning. So still plenty of snow falling, just not quite enough wind to warrant blizzard warnings. And then we have some winter weather advisories in the purple areas on your map. Now, we also do have high wind warnings in that kind of yellow color, so some folks that aren't getting the snow are going to get the wind. And again, just really most folks out here are going to see very active weather here for at least the next 24 to 48 hours. But honestly, even this will linger in throughout the next week or so, although again, calming down here not too long from now. All right, let's quickly run on through kind of the East Coast here and what's ongoing with this quick moving storm system, and then we'll kind of start talking about the West Coast a little bit here. So here we go. Again, this is kind of about noon today. You'll notice some widespread rain falling from the Ohio River Valley down through Alabama, Mississippi, and then up into the Carolinas. As I mentioned, could see some wintry weather trying to mix in here through the higher terrains of North Carolina and up into West Virginia for sure, but mainly just a rain event here, and that's going to continue through the afternoon hours. This is getting into about rush hour tonight, about 5 o'clock Eastern time. You'll notice still raining good from Greenville, Spartanburg down towards Columbia, Charleston, back up towards Charlotte. The Danville, Virginia area likely seeing some rain. Also raining back towards Ohio, Indiana, and Kentucky. But honestly, I think the heaviest rainfall rates will be back down towards kind of southern Alabama into the Florida Panhandle and then down into the Midlands and low country of South Carolina. Again, could see some moderate to heavy rainfall rates as this rolls on through. Now here we go into about 8 o'clock tonight, 9 o'clock. That rain shield continues to slowly work off towards the north and east, and again, raining pretty good overnight into the mid-Atlantic, and then into, again, areas of eastern Kentucky, eastern Tennessee, and into Ohio, seeing some scattered rain. And overnight tonight, that will continue to work off towards the northeast, and by the time we're waking up tomorrow morning, about 8 a.m. here, again, still raining pretty good here from the Outer Banks all the way up into the DMV and up the I-95 corridor towards Philadelphia, back into New Jersey, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Could be seeing some rain out of this as well. And again, all of that just continues to slowly work off towards the north and east tomorrow. So this is about 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon Eastern time. Again, you'll notice starting to clear out a little bit back towards the Ohio River Valley and into the southeast, specifically the Carolinas, Virginia, Georgia. But again, still seeing some rain here well into the northeast and also back down into Florida as this kind of has that shrimp look to it, if you will. Again, bringing some storms back down that way. And in fact, I wouldn't let your guard down. Could see a couple of maybe stronger storms here on the southern side of this storm system as a whole through kind of the I-4 corridor of Florida tomorrow afternoon. So definitely watch out for that from Tampa up towards Orlando, Ocala, back down into even kind of the Cocoa Beach area, Cape Canaveral. Again, could see some stronger storms coming in off the Gulf and eventually into Florida itself before eventually, again, about the time the sun is setting tomorrow, 6 or 7 o'clock here, again, just some good old-fashioned rain continuing to fall along the I-95 corridor from Philadelphia up through kind of Bangor, Maine. And again, still some scattered showers and even some storms down into pretty far into the southeast from kind of Macon southbound down into the Florida Peninsula. Before eventually we're kind of waking up Sunday morning, and most of us are finally clearing out again by this point. Again, still some scattered showers up into the northeast, specifically Maine, Massachusetts, and kind of surrounding areas. And again, maybe even a couple showers left over through the Florida Peninsula. But as a whole, we're clearing out and should have a much nicer Sunday in store for most folks here in the east. All right. Rainfall totals here, again, going to be pretty dependent on your location, obviously, as it often is, but some folks could get a good 2 to 4 inches of rain out of this, especially, I think, into kind of southern Alabama here and along the Florida Panhandle, down into coastal South Carolina, could see some good rain out of this, and then also isolated spots to get into some of those heavier storms tomorrow and overnight tonight into Florida could see, again, some heavier rainfall totals, but overall speaking, I'd say about half an inch to 2 inches of rain is going to be pretty widespread up and down the eastern seaboard, again from the Carolinas northbound up into coastal New Jersey, Long Island, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and even up into coastal sections of Maine. So again, not anything too out of the ordinary, not too much of a flooding threat, but again, just a good old-fashioned soaking rain to start off our spring. Now temperatures today, obviously it's going to be pretty cold as we've got this rain and kind of this cold air locked into place over much of the Ohio River Valley down into the southeast, specifically kind of those normal cold air damming regions of the Carolinas from, again, really Athens, Georgia, up through Greenville, Spartanburg, and then even into Charlotte. Likely going to struggle to get out of the 40s today through many of these regions. But back west, again, it's going to be very warm. We have had this continual kind of surge of northward or southern air moving northward over the past couple of weeks out into the Great Plains, and today's no different, getting well up into the 70s and 80s once again. And again, February was just a very warm month for a lot of folks out that way, and March is looking to start the same. Now, by the time we're waking up tomorrow morning, again, a relatively, I'd say, average kind of March morning here, at least for the beginning of March. But by the time we get into tomorrow afternoon, again, we're going to kind of begin to rebound as that storm system pushes off towards the north and east. And these warm temperatures once again return here from Texas, Oklahoma, up into Kansas, getting well into the 80s, and even getting warmer back into the southeast as well, especially compared to what we saw or are going to see today with kind of those cooler temperatures. And then by the time we're getting into our Sunday afternoon, again, all out, I don't want to say heat wave, but all out spring wave, we'll call it, of, return to widespread 70s and even some 80s here through much of the country here east of the Rockies. Though I will mention still a little bit cooler in the northeast where we might still only be in the 40s, 50s, but again from the southeast through the Ohio River Valley, the Red River Valley, even down into the Gulf states, again 70s, 60s, and 80s are going to be pretty widespread here, I think, for a lot of folks for our Sunday afternoon. All right, now let's talk about out west a little bit again, kind of getting clobbered out there with this blizzard, and that is not going to change for at least the next 48 hours or so, and I will mention it'll snow for at least the next week or so on and off, but the real brunt of the storm is honestly happening about right now. So let's talk about why that is and how long it's kind of going to last. Well, it wasn't too long ago, about a week ago, I was talking about a big trough out in the Pacific Northwest that was going to dive on through, and that eventually would bring severe weather to the east, and sure enough, that happened. Well, we're doing it all again with another big-time trough out here, with very cold air kind of diving southward towards the coastlines of Washington, Oregon, and Northern California, and this big bowling ball of cold air, if you will eventually move inland and again continue to bring this energy that is kind of allowing for these high winds as well as these just blizzard conditions as a whole. Now, eventually what will happen that's going to be a little bit different than a week ago is this trough of cold air isn't going to quite swing all the way east through the country. In fact, it's going to kind of park itself over the Pacific Northwest for a little while and kind of break off into smaller segments here. You'll notice kind of one lobe here, another lobe here of a trough, and eventually going through the next week or so, again, this has the potential to bring some active weather to the east, but through the next couple of days, again, more of a West Coast problem. And you'll notice that here, straight from the Weather Prediction Center, we have widespread extreme winter storm impacts over the next 3 days here into kind of obviously the Sierra Nevadas of California, and then also into the mountain ranges kind of a little bit closer to the coastline here into Northern California and into Southern Oregon. And I should probably know the name of those mountains, but if you happen to know, definitely let me know. Love a good geography lesson. But again, just either way, widespread big-time winter storm impacts, even into Nevada, Utah, Colorado, and into the Yellowstone National Park area. Major winter storm impacts likely over the next 3 days as this big-time storm system continues to crank away and bring these higher impacts. And as I also mentioned earlier, winds have been a big-time deal. I believe I saw this morning a statistic that one of these mountains kind of out in this kind of northern section of the Sierra Nevadas had a wind gust past 100 miles an hour. In fact, it might have even been past 120 miles an hour. So when we say blizzard conditions, we don't just mean kind of strong tropical storm force winds. Some of these mountain peaks are getting well up into like Category 3, Category 4 hurricane wind speeds. So very impressive stuff. But either way, just know, obviously, the higher terrains here out west, big-time wind gusts. This is just over the next 24 hours, and these are max gusts. But either way, again, if you're under those blizzard warnings or those high wind warnings, just know big-time wind on the way. In fact, it could gust well past hurricane strength for a lot of folks. So again, kind of some dangerous stuff happening out that way. All right, let's take a look at future radar and kind of discuss, well, what is this going to look like over the next couple of days here out west and kind of time out this snowfall and this rain. And here we go. So this afternoon and into this evening, again, just look at these bands of kind of stronger areas of lift in the atmosphere and kind of these convective lines excuse me, of rainfall trying to move inland and eventually hitting these mountain ranges and bringing those blizzard conditions. Now, that will continue throughout today into overnight tonight. And again, this is some pretty widespread snowfall happening, excuse me, and will likely, again, I don't want to say maybe be the peak of the storm, but will definitely be about as bad as it gets. So I guess the peak is another word for that. Again, through a lot of these portions of California, overnight tonight and even into the time we're waking up tomorrow morning, just look at how widespread these areas of snow are. All the way up and down the coast from Washington down into California, back up through Nevada, Oregon, and Utah, Wyoming, Montana, and I think I just named every state there. If not, then obviously if I didn't name your state and you're right there in that circle, just know widespread snowfall overnight tonight. By the time we're waking up tomorrow morning, more of the same, and it continues throughout the day tomorrow. Just more and more snow showers working on inland. Rain at the coastline itself, but not very far from the coast, again changing over to snow. Now, what I will mention that is going to be kind of important here to the forecast is by the time we get into, let me check the date here, yeah, kind of overnight Saturday into Sunday, some of this energy is going to try to break free of the Rockies here. You'll notice kind of getting low pressure to form now into the Great Plains itself, and that is going to have the potential to kind of, again, bring some widespread snow, maybe even into northern Montana, into northern North Dakota as well. Could see some snow or ice out of that little storm system. But this overall theme of kind of pieces of energy breaking off from this overall troughing out west is going to be very important to our forecast in the east for next week. And to be quite honest with you, I'll show you in a minute, but models are all over the place. But just know, anytime you see kind of these little lobes of energy kind of trying to break off and move eastbound, again, those are going to pay huge dividends into what happens for everyone kind of east of the Rockies. All right, so this is kind of a very early Sunday morning West Coast time. We're going to go ahead and switch over to the global models now to kind of keep on trucking here, and you'll notice more of the same. Through our Sunday afternoon, that snow continuing to fall into the Rockies from Colorado all the way over to California, up to Washington, back even into Montana. So again, just more of the same. That continues even into our Monday afternoon and even into our Tuesday afternoon. Now, what I will mention is by the time we're getting into Tuesday, this overall troughing pattern is going to break down a little bit, and we're now going to have kind of, again, just smaller lobes of energy, as I mentioned, kind of trying to roll on through. So I think come Tuesday afternoon, things become more isolated in nature, and you'll notice, again, even by the time we're getting into Wednesday here, we have smaller areas of low pressure and not such a just big bowling ball of energy, as I called it earlier. And that should definitely help to keep things a little bit calmer going into next week before eventually, again, I think about a week or so out from now, we really calm down and have a little bit of time to maybe dig out from some of the snow through many areas out west. All right, so taking a look at snowfall totals as a whole, this is through the next week or so. Plenty of it on the way here into the northern Rockies. Again, multiple feet of snow from Washington all the way down here through Oregon. Some of these totals clocking in at about 60 inches of snow. Definitely not out of the question. I think here through the mountain ranges of Idaho, a couple feet of snow as well. Maybe 1 to 4 feet of snow. I know it's a very big range, but again, it's just such elevation dependent here. And even back into the mountains of Yellowstone, could see near 50 inches of snowfall. Also, I think I just said rain multiple times. I'm talking about snow, not rain here. Sorry. Yeah, I think I definitely said rain. Anyway, a good amount of snow on the way here through, again, all of these mountain areas out west. But the real winners are going to be into the Sierra Nevadas. If I just hover over some of these totals, again, more than 100 inches kind of showing up here for widespread areas, and realize, we've already seen plenty of snow out of this over the past 24 to 48 hours, and this is still what's to come. 120 inches of snow is obviously nothing to kind of brush off, as that's, let's see, how many feet of snow is that? It's a lot of feet of snow. I don't know exactly how many off the top of my head, but 12 inches times something. This is why I'm only in Calc 2 and not Calc 4 or differential equations. Anyway, I'll move on from the math. Just know a lot of snow on the way for a lot of areas out here into the desert southwest and into the Sierra Nevadas. All right, now that we've talked about the blizzard of, March 2024 long enough, let's go ahead and start talking about what is on the horizon here for those of us in the east. Well, as I mentioned, that big kind of troughing out west eventually is going to break down a little bit, and what's going to happen is we're going to get smaller lobes of energy here that eventually kind of try to work eastbound. So that's going to, again, be very important for what happens in the east. These are the GFS ensemble members, and you'll notice they are indicating by the time we get about 7 to 10 days from now, some of that energy out of the Pacific making it far enough eastbound that we have a pretty impressive trough here and likely some sort of storm system in the Ohio River Valley. Now, again, this is quite far away, about 7 to 10 days, as I mentioned, so exact details right now are very blurry. In fact, the models are all over the place. with even a storm system potential, even before this one, going into about next Wednesday. So they're all over the place with that one. This one's even later than that, going into next Sunday. So again, a lot of question marks we need to answer here, but just know I do see the potential for a very impactful storm system here on the horizon through much of the east. And just to show you what that could look like, I'll show you our latest European and GFS model. Excuse me. All right, so I'm going to pick this up into Monday afternoon, and you'll notice here we go. Here's the first piece of energy that kind of tries to break free of the Rockies and kind of try to get into the southeast a little bit. This is about 90 hours from now, again, Monday afternoon. Now, the European model kind of develops this into a low pressure into the southeast, could bring some rainfall Monday, Tuesday. But what eventually happens here with this system, again, on a European model at least, is we get a defined area of low pressure to kind of form here along the southeast. And what this tries to do is ride up into the east coast where we've got some high pressure in place trying to funnel in cold air. So again, everyone kind of wanted to talk about spring here a little bit, but notice what happens here. We've got a pretty big ice storm and snowstorm, just kind of winter storm in general, showing up on the European model only about a week out from now through New York State, northern Pennsylvania, portions of Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire. So obviously a lot of question marks with that, as that would be very impactful for a lot of folks up that way, and we'll need to watch that. But look what happens right behind it. Again, about a week from now, another storm system, this one stronger, developing out into the Great Plains, and this one has a classic kind of springtime setup all over it, with kind of snow on one side and the potential for maybe some severe weather on the other side going into again, kind of late next work week and even into next weekend. You'll notice the storm system really spinning up, strengthening, and bringing the potential for some impactful weather. Now, that's just one model. We're taking a look at the GFS model. Very different solution here. We'll go ahead and start with that first storm. Again, this is about Tuesday, Wednesday. You'll notice we do get low pressure to kind of start forming here over Oklahoma, much like the European model showed. But what's different is this doesn't really phase along the coastline. In fact, it kind of dies out a little bit and just kind of shoots off up towards Canada. And if that should happen, then we'll have a lot less of a winter weather threat in the Northeast. And in fact, this will just be more of a scattered rain event during the first half of next week. As you'll notice, kind of that rain just works on through. Now, what they do both agree with, though, both models, is once again, about a week from now, going into next weekend, not this weekend, a more powerful system kind of begins to develop into the Great Plains. And again, this one has spring kind of storm potential written all over it. Going into next weekend, widespread rain falling through much of the eastern half of the country. And eventually this turns into a bit of a double barrel low. What I mean by that is we just kind of have two separate low pressure systems, kind of like a double barrel shotgun is where the expression comes from there. But notice what happens is then the GFS pumps out a big time winter storm into the Northeast going into next weekend. So the European showed a winter storm in the Northeast kind of next Thursday, Friday, and more of an ice event. The GFS says not the first storm system, but the second storm system will bring that kind of wintry impact here, going again about 10 days or so from now, maybe not even quite that long, about 7 to 10 days from now, into much of the Northeast with the second storm system. So a lot to figure out here. Models, again, all over the place, and unfortunately, they're not doing us any favors here in the forecasting department. But what I will mention is, nonetheless, I do see potential for impactful weather on down the road here through the first half of March for many folks in the country. Obviously, we're already seeing the blizzards out west, but some of that active weather could try to move east, and again, maybe even turn wintry for some folks. And also severe for others, I should add as well. All right, let's talk about that first storm because, again, the European did show a pretty big-time winter event. Well, if we look at its ensemble members, it agrees pretty good here. Look at all of this ice showing up here starting next Thursday, going through next weekend on the ensemble members. A good mean here of about, a tenth of an inch, upwards of near 3/10 of an inch for isolated spots in the Northeast. Now, if we kind of zoom this out from just the European model and look at our global models all kind of thrown together here, you'll notice a less of a signal here, but a signal nonetheless, and more of a glaze to 1/10 of an inch kind of showing up for many folks up this way. Again, the European solution that I first showed you could very well happen. Also, the GFS solution that shows absolutely really nothing happening outside of some rain could also happen. We're just going to need some time here to kind of iron out these details, and we'll definitely do that over the next couple of days for you. But again, we're still about 5 to 7 days from this first event, so we got some time to kind of figure things out. Now, what about the second storm system? Again, the GFS showed a big-time snowstorm somewhere in the Northeast and even the Midwest here, kind of about 10 days or so from now. Well, the chances of that happening here in the ensemble member world here. We'll start with the European. All of its ensembles thrown together. Again, didn't really show a storm as wintry as the GFS, but its ensemble members do say, hey, we've got about maybe a 10 to 30% chance of something like that occurring here in the Midwest, into the Great Lakes, and even into portions of the Northeast, and maybe even down into some of the higher terrains of West Virginia northbound. Now we take a look at the GFS and its ensemble members. Well, you'll notice a much more defined area here. From Pennsylvania down through West Virginia up into New York State, we've got about a 30 to 50% chance of maybe an impactful storm system kind of on the horizon here for somebody into the Northeast, even into the Ohio River Valley and into the Midwest. Excuse me, again, about 7 to 10 days from now. So if I just quickly go back to the first map, and then I show the second map, very different, again, solutions. And as I mentioned earlier, the models are not doing us any favors. All right, quickly touching on temperatures here for the medium to long range. Again, this afternoon, quite cool in the southeast as that rain works on through, but also quite warm up into the northern Great Plains compared to what you would expect for March 1st. Now, as I move this ahead into time, I think going into early next week, we'll skip this ahead to Monday afternoon. Once again, those warm temperatures rebuild back into the east here, and we're getting back to well above average while we're still cooler out west. Now, moving later on ahead into next week, it looks like through the ensembles at least, a lot of that warm air kind of stays in the east as a whole. Now, I don't want you to assume everyone east of the Rockies here is going to be well above average all of next week. In fact, again, as I just showed you the differences with those storm tracks, well, it's also going to have big differences in the temperatures here. So just as a whole, most people I think will be above average throughout much of next week here east of the Rockies. And that could even go into next weekend before whatever major storm system works eastbound works east enough that it brings cold air here closer towards the middle of the month. But again, just still a lot of question marks here for a lot of different components of the forecast past 5 days. So again, I'm sorry I'm giving you a bunch of question marks today, but unfortunately, we can only be quite as good as the data we have in front of us. And right now, it's all over the place. So we'll figure it out. Again, we'll give it a couple of days to kind of settle a little bit and analyze these models a little bit better. But for now, just know high variability, I think is the word to use, maybe, again, in the forecast from about 5 to 10 days out or so. Alrighty, well, we went through a lot today, had a pretty long video, about 26, 27 minutes or so. So again, hopefully you found some use in it. Hopefully you enjoyed it. And if you did, definitely let me know in the comments. With that said, though, appreciate you hanging around with me. Hope you have a great rest of your Friday and hopefully a wonderful start to your spring. And I'll see you all tomorrow.